This video contains elements that are not suitable for children under the age of 14. Viewer discretion is advised.
I've been dreading this moment for a while now, but at last we have entered the darkest period in Thomas and Friends history, the Nitrogen Era. The first full CGI production to be released was the feature-length special Hero of the Rails, and it was kind of a big deal back then. Thomas discovers an old abandoned Japanese engine named Hero, and relies on the help of the Steam team to bring the Master of the Railway back to his former glory, all while trying to keep Spencer and Sir Topham Hatt from finding out. And, well, it hasn't aged very well. It feels like it drags on for a bit, and Hero's departure at the end feels pointless since he's been seen on Sodor a lot between Series 13 to 20, plus Kenji on the rails again from Series 24, not to mention that the voice acting and visual design both pale compared to what ARC Productions and Jamfield have brought since. Now, to be fair, this was the first production to have a full voice cast since Magic Railroad, so you're not going to get it right the first time around. Mind you, compared to what Hit's other shows looked like at the time, Thomas's world being in CGI is practically Pixar quality, and like Pixar, it gets better with every subsequent production for the most part. Which brings me on to Series 13, the first in the show to be in full CGI after 11 series with models and one hybrid that just looks worse with age. And while I find Series 13 to be bad, I will try to be fair to this series and start out with a few positives. First off, I like how the CGI demonstrates what you could never properly achieve with the models. For example, James being given his pink undercoat and tickled pink. You also get far more expansive sets for many of the long shots, and you also have more consistent set designs, with occasional tweaks here and there that could later be seen in the Brenner era. Plus, it's cheaper in the long run since you can simply reuse the models and, again, occasionally tweak them to look better. Series 13 was the first to utilize a full voice cast for the characters. For example, Ben Small voiced Thomas for the UK dub, while Martin Sherman voiced him for the US dub. I haven't heard much of Martin's voice acting in a long time, and for the purposes of a proper reviewing experience, I've predominantly stuck with the British dub. And no, I don't have any intention of rewatching the American dub for Series 13 to 16. One revisit of that era was one too many for me, but I will say that Ben Small's voice acting for Series 13 doesn't hold up, and his performances as Thomas up to Series 18 were usually hit or miss.
If I may say something, Zach, about the two voices for Thomas?
Sure, go ahead.
Between the two, I personally prefer Martin Sherman voicing Thomas, especially in Season 17 and 18. His Percy voice is quite good too, while his Diesel voice was hit or miss. Ben Small, on the other hand, I'm sure he's a nice guy, but his Thomas is no John Hasler or Eddie Glenn. Although I do like his Renee's voice, and he did some other voices that were pretty good too.
However, the best voice actor for Thomas, discounting John Hasler, is Daniel Radcliffe.
Harry Potter? When did he voice Thomas?
Robot Chicken.
My son organs! Oh, just finish me, you pussies! Oh, what cruel god would give a train a face?
Okay, it wasn't official, but still, if it did make another Thomas movie, Dan Radcliffe would be my first choice for Thomas himself.
I see. Well, I guess I'll leave you to continue sharing your thoughts on Series 13.
Thanks, Mike. Anyway, the other voice actors who joined in Hero of the Rails included Carrie Shale, Teresa Gallagher, William Hope, Glenn Rage, Matt Wilkinson, Jules DeJong, David Badella, and Keith Wickham, as well as Michael Brandon voicing Diesel for the US dub, and Togo Egawa as Hero for both dubs. Again, the voice acting doesn't hold up compared to later series, but for the time, it was nice having the characters actually speak for themselves in the English dub, even if the writing didn't do them much justice, but more on that in a bit. Lastly, the runtime was extended once again, this time to 8 minutes and 45 seconds, with the opening song, engine roll call, and credits filling up close to 11 minutes. Even if it felt too long for the stories being told, I like that they extended the runtime because, in theory, it allows more room for the story to develop, but again, it was finally realized in the Brenner era. And that's all I can think of in terms of the positives. The writing for Series 9 through 12 ranged from pretty good to pretty terrible, but for Series 13, holy 18-inch Stonehenge, it was dreadful. Every once in a while, you had a good episode like Tickled Pink and A Blooming Mess, but the majority of the episodes fall victim to what many have called the three strikes formula. Basically, an engine screws up their jobs 3 times before putting things right again, and then you pad it all out with unnecessary narration from Michaels, Angelus, and Brandon, and that's Series 13 in a nutshell. Wow, that is very creative.
not.
But that's not the worst of it. Thomas appears and speaks in every episode, and it gets to the point that 13 episodes are dedicated to him, most of which were wasted on him being an insufferable dumbass. What were they thinking?
Hello? Hello? Anybody home? Huh?
The rest of the Steam team, barring Edward, each got one episode to themselves. James and Emily got pretty lucky with Tickle Pink and A Blooming Mess respectively, but everyone else was a mixed bag. Gordon had a fair starring role with Snow Tracks. Percy's parcel was simply okay. But as for Toby and Henry, well, if you thought they had bad luck throughout series 8 through 12, then take that, only ramped up to 11, and that's what we got with Toby's new whistle and Henry's good deeds. Yeah, on a side note, I never understood why anyone would enjoy Henry's good deeds. He didn't perform any at all in this episode. Stopping for animals to let them cross isn't a good deed. It's just common sense and showing sensitivity to their surroundings. It's a stupid episode and solid proof as to why he's better suited as a secondary character, because being part of the Steam team means that you were going to end up with starring roles even if they didn't fit your character or previously established starring roles. Another episode I don't understand is Buzzy Bees, an episode that somehow got bundled with digital downloads and Hulu versions of several CGI Thomas DVDs, each containing 4 episodes but needed a 5th in order to fill up 1 hour. Why? What was so appealing about that heap of junk? Couldn't they have chosen other episodes in the Nitrogen series to add some variety? They had 80 of them. Surely a bit more variety wouldn't hurt. Even if it was wonky whistle, at least we would have gotten something different. The only episode to not focus on any of the Steam team was the series finale, Hero Helps Out. I've not revisited Hero of the Rails yet, but I will say right now that I think he's an okay character, but Hero's leading lead role in this series didn't do him any justice. You could have replaced him with Edward and the result would have been the same, and strangely, he still stays on Sodor for a further 11 series, I think, before leaving for Japan again with no fanfare, even though despite missing his home country, Hero certainly doesn't seem to spend a lot of time there. The other Hero of the Rails newbies were Victor and Kevin, the Steamworks duo. Victor is probably my favorite out of them, and it probably helps that he's remained a constant staple of the CGI series and the Sodor Steamworks. Kevin, however, took a little while to grow. His clumsiness was very much used for comedic effect, even though it was toned down in recent years, but it does pop up once in a while. The only real newbie for Series 13 was Charlie, the Purple Billy Exby. That is probably the best thing about Charlie, is that he replaced the orange idiot in Splish Splash Splosh, so that's a bullet dodged there. I swear, if I see Billy again in the show, I will not be happy. So many people hate Charlie as well, but for me, personally, I'm sort of indifferent to him. He's not the worst thing in existence, but they really could have done more of him if given a proper chance. They have a decent role for him as a shunting engine at Nafford, but he's hardly been addressed since Series 18, specials like The Great Race notwithstanding. Series 13 was going to air in 2009, but was pushed to 2010 instead after production had ended. Production had started in January 2009, running concurrently with Hero of the Rails, which would explain why there was such a small cast in Series 13. However, 4 episodes were released in theaters that November before being released on DVD in January the following year. The episodes were Playtime, Splish Splash Splosh, Slippy Sodor, and Snow Tracks. And in between the episodes was Mr. Perkins baking a cake in the shape of Thomas for Sir Topham Hatt's birthday. Which reminds me, for 2 Series 12 DVDs in America, the episodes included in-between segments featuring engine driver Mr. Arkwright, played by Robert Slade, either making a cardboard Thomas or getting ready for the day's work. From what I remember, they were pretty well liked, but for whatever reason, he was superseded by Mr. Perkins, played by the late Ben Forster. Who knows why Mr. Arkwright was replaced, even if he was later mentioned in some Perkins segments. The Mr. Perkins segments were probably the biggest highlight of the CGI releases at the time. Like the Arkwright segments, they were vaguely reminiscent of Shiny Time Station, but with Perkins interacting with the audience while things were happening in the day of his working life, such as looking after Beaky the troublesome parrot, demonstrating how a model railway works, or teaching his protege Artie how to be a responsible engine driver. After the Nitrogen era, Mr. Perkins had his own set of segments away from the engine driver's common room at Knapford Station, like teaching children various aspects of the railway, answering to postcards from various passengers, or reading some stories from the Railway series. Sadly, they were discontinued in 2017 following Ben Forster's death from cancer that same year. Prior to Mr. Perkins' Railway, there were the Down to the Station segments, narrated by Michael Zangelis and Brandon for their respective dubs. They were produced by Leighton Shale and directed by Ben Hall, again showing how real railways operate, being filmed at the Lakeside and Haverfordway Railway and the Llangollen Railway. These segments were readily available on DVD in the UK, and the only way you could watch them in America was on PBS Kids. You know, it's really sad that the in-between segments are a lot more enjoyable than the episode Series 14 shoved into our faces. I don't know what more I could say that hasn't been said. This series is just dreadful, and the few gems aren't enough to salvage the whole thing. You know what's even worse, folks? We have to endure this crap for 3 more series. 2010 marked the 65th anniversary of the publication of the first Railway series book, and it was treated as a pretty big deal with the UK DVD The Best of Thomas to celebrate the show's history up to that point. That same year also marked the release of Misty Island Rescue, which has since gone down by many fans to be the worst Thomas movie since Thomas and the Magic Railroad. But it did end on an interesting cliffhanger, hinting at next year's special.
You'll be laughing on the other side of your boilers soon, silly steamers. Yes.
Which brings me on to Series 14. It first aired in October 2010, 8 months after Series 14 had finished. That does sound very surprising, doesn't it? Having 2 series airing within the same year, and on the 65th anniversary, no less? Wow! That may have been great for the time, but with hindsight, it's quality over quantity that mattered. If you're wondering what I have to say regarding the writing for Series 14, sadly, I have little to say that I haven't already for Series 13. Basically, it's that, but way worse. Here's a couple of examples.
This lamp will make me look silly. Everyone at the concert will look their best except me.
Why would James not want to wear a lamp, and why was he so blind that he couldn't see 3 feet to his left onto a well-lit platform? What kind of crap is that?
Bust my buffers! These woods are too scary for me.
Really? It's just a forest. Why is Toby scared shitless about the sounds of an owl and the wind? And I thought him being scared of an abandoned mine in Toby's discovery was bad. And yes, people, the classic era was the first to have an episode that portrayed Toby as a wuss. But back to Series 14.
If I bounce along the track, perhaps that sound will soon come back. The sound that makes me smile and giggle when I puff on tracks that jiggle.
Why the hell is Thomas so easily amused by popping noises? Doesn't he know that it's just the corks on bottles of lemonade? Why is he so fucking childish?
Easy there, Zack. Breathe.
Once again, I apologize, but Series 14 was just painful for me to sit through again. Sure, they brought back characters like Harold, Salty, Whiff, Harry, and Bert for CGI, but since most of them returned in Misty Island Rescue, that's not really much of an achievement. They toned back a little on Thomas being a spotlight hog, but he's still prominent in episodes, sticking his funnel where it doesn't belong. The Logging Locos and Captain appear following Misty Island Rescue, but I've barely a thing to say regarding Captain. He hasn't done anything significant since his debut, so as Matt would put it, I've got nothing. Bash, Dash, and Ferdinand, however, are just insufferable whenever they turn up. Why is that? Well...
What? What did you say?
I said that the Logging Locos appear...
No. Please, no. God, no. They can't be here. Those pathetic excuses of engines. Not after the horrible excuse of a special that was Misty Island Rescue. They just can't be here.
Well, since you asked...
Shake! Shake! Make me quake! Make me quake until I shake! Looks like you do, so we're here to give it. Do as we say, and we'll show you the way.
That's right.
You'll find plenty more on our island.
That's right.
One biff, one bash, and there's always a crash.
That's right.
Fizzling fireboxes? That's not meant to happen.
That's right.
This is not right.
You puff to the hill and you stay quite still. You chuff to the sea and you wait patiently.
Then you steam back to here.
And the snow will appear.
That's right.
Do you think that's right? I don't know. It'll be fine with a star.
That's right.
They are here!
That's it. I'm done.
Now, if you'll excuse me.
Uh-oh. Oh no. Matt, please calm down.
Wow, that's a side of Matt I never thought I'd ever see. But in all fairness, the logging locos aren't my cup of tea neither. Glad we never got to hear from them again since the Christmas Tree Express.
Yeah, same here, Cam. It would also be entertaining to see if what Matt said about the logging locos wasn't so true. But anyway, you see what I mean? I think those logging loco clips speak for themselves. The only other newbie for Series 14 was Scruff the Scruncher. I've never really cared much for him either, and I sometimes kind of forget he exists. But there's one line in his debut episode that's always made me mad.
Thomas liked Scruff, but he was worried. Really useful engines couldn't be really dirty ones.
What now?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. What that episode is basically saying that if all you do is dirty jobs, then you're not really accomplishing anything in your life. I'm sorry, but what the fuck were they thinking? Engines get dirty a lot of the time. 19 times out of 20, they're doing something to make themselves useful. Hell, Thomas was friendly with Whiff earlier in that episode, and Whiff was arguably even dirtier than Scruff. So yeah, that's the role model Thomas has become in this era, folks. A hypocritical, borderline xenophobic dumbass. But that's not the only awful lesson Series 14 has taught us. Stealing is perfectly acceptable, children won't cheer for you if you're not a steam engine, messing about with dangerous equipment is perfectly fine, and it's only women that do the laundry. Yeah, in case of the last one, I consider Pingy Pongy Pickup canon in name only, mostly because of this line.
Well, there was that time I took Sodor United's football kit to the laundry.
I just find it sad that journalists constantly beat down on the sad story of Henry for supposedly having no happy ending, but I'm sure that if Pingy Pongy Pickup had been written back then, they would hate that episode for enforcing an outdated, possibly borderline misogynistic stereotype. It's now become my most hated episode featuring Emily as the main character. Yeah, I hated Marvin, Emily in the middle, and Emily's best friend, and I'll get to those soon enough. Then there's Thomas and the Snowman Party, which has one of the worst morals of the entire show. Not as awful as Apology Impossible, but damned if it doesn't come close. The Series 14 episode basically teaches children that if you steal someone's property without their acknowledgement, you won't get in trouble for it.
What? What the fuck?
I wish I was kidding, but I'm not. Speaking of winter-themed episodes, do you remember back in Series 9 when Keeping Up with James caused controversy over Winter Holiday being used instead of Christmas? This resulted in the DVD Merry Winter Wish being held back for a United Kingdom just to replace winter holidays with Christmas holidays, or just plain Christmas in a few cases. And this also applies to Series 15 and, I think, 16 as well. Sure, we can thank Hilary Fortnum for helping to bring Christmas back, but really, it should never have gotten rid of it to begin with. Still makes you wonder why it didn't reach the headlines earlier, but at least it was something. Series 14 began production in May 2009, with the first half being produced alongside Series 13, specifically the first 8 episodes plus Odie and Dignity and Henry's Magic Box, which have a copyright date of 2009. After that came Misty Island Rescue, then the second half of Series 14 was produced alongside the first half of Series 15, hence the abundance of the logging logos in both halves. After that came Day of the Diesels, then the second half of Series 15, which was produced alongside the first half of Series 16, before being followed up by Blue Mountain Mystery, and then the second half of Series 16. Confused about all of it? I don't blame you. Just trying to untangle this complicated production schedule for Nitrogen's Time with Thomas is like trying to figure out Michael Caine's great idea at the end of The Italian Job, how Superman was able to reverse time in the first Richard Donner Superman movie, and the expanded Back to the Future timeline, while you're trying to cure a patient with cancer. Okay, that was a bit of an exaggeration, perhaps, but you get my point. Series 13 was bad, but Series 14 was even worse. I apologize if the review is a bit short, but there's honestly very little I can say that I haven't already. This is the first series of the show which I gave 4 episodes the equivalent rating to 0 stars out of 5, and all of them ended up in the bottom 5. But if you think that's bad, then brace yourselves for what's coming up next. There was a very short airing gap between Series 14 and 15. Between November 2010 and February 2011, there were no new episodes airing in the United Kingdom, marking the shortest gap ever between 2 series of Thomas and Friends by 5 months. By contrast, the longest gap was Series 2 and 3, 5 years. 2011 was expected to be a big year. A new special was coming out this fall. It was Wilbur Audrey's centenary, and there was the report of a new Railway Series book coming out as well. The latter was definitely something to feel happy about, but I'll come to that when we get to Series 16, but for now I want to talk about Series 15. It premiered throughout March 2011, and between this and the 2 series prior, that meant we had 60 episodes within the span of 15 months. A likely reason is so that Milkshake could re-air as much CGI Thomas content as possible, a strategy that was later used for the Bob the Builder reboot, but one topic at a time, please. Chronologically, Series 15 followed on from Day of the Diesels, yet the newbies barely did anything significant until the second half, and even then, the episodes were utter shit. Coincidentally, 15 episodes out of Series 15 were all penned by Sharon Miller, her most to date. Combining all of her efforts across Series 9 to 16, she penned a whopping 66 episodes, and exactly 2/3 of them were from the Nitrogen era alone. That's pretty alarming if you ask me. That's more than Davey Moore, more than Andrew Brenner, even more than Paul Larson. The only 3 writers that topped Sharon in terms of quantity were Wilbur Audrey himself, Bert Allcroft, and David Midden coming out on top. The only 5 episodes Miller didn't write were Percy's New Friends, Spencer the Grand, Kevin the Steamy, Percy the Snowman, and the infamous Wonky Whistle. Although, in general, Series 15 was so poor that you might be easily forgiven for thinking she didn't write them, least of all Wonky Whistle. Speaking of that episode, Wonky Whistle is so infamous among the fandom because, well, let me show you.
I'm sure my whistle isn't wonky. I must race to Farmer McColl's.
Thomas!
Yep, that one scene single-handedly brought the episode into infamy, and fans have ranked it the worst of the show, even more so than Edward Strikes Out, which I don't really understand looking back. Yes, what Thomas did was incredibly dangerous and stupid. Yes, the workman could have potentially gotten killed as he set off, and yes, Thomas was of course an idiot for not listening. But did you really expect anything less by this point? Considering how often Thomas acted like a dumbass over the course of the Nitrogen era, him acting like that was to be expected by this point. Not only that, if you took out that moment altogether, then Wonky Whistle becomes a run-of-the-mill bad episode, and I doubt people would have talked about it that much. Writer Neil Benn has even said that the final episode we got was very different from what he originally intended, so who knows how it could have gone. But then again, very important sheep from Series 19 was this episode done better, suggesting that Wonky Whistle, like a lot of other episodes from the Nitrogen era, had potential that was quagmired by the formula at the time. So is Wonky Whistle really the worst episode ever? When it first aired, I would have agreed with the majority, but now, not even close. Don't get me wrong, I still consider it to be a bad episode, but the show has had way worse episodes before and since.
What? You don't rank Wonky Whistle as the worst episode?
Oh, great. The bitch is back to complain again.
What the hell is wrong with you? Not ranking Wonky Whistle as the worst episode of the whole show is a likely sign that you might actually like.
Oh, come now, Matt. You should have seen that coming from a mile away. Look, I'm not saying fans shouldn't hate on Wonky Whistle, but calling it the worst episode of the show? Come on. I apologize if I sound condescending, but saying it's the worst of this entire 24-series show is not really much of an opinion. It's just repeating what's been said to death already. Say what you want about what I've said, calling Rusty to the Rescue the worst episode of the show, but at least I tried to think outside the box. Wonky Whistle isn't the worst episode of the Nitrogen era, let alone Series 15 in my eyes. I could name at least 10 episodes that are worse, but more on that next time. But Wonky Whistle does feature everything people hate about the Nitrogen era, like, say, annoying rhyming, nonsensical alliteration, the Three Strikes formula, dangerous actions, Thomas being a brain-dead idiot, the list goes on. If people want to claim Wonky Whistle's the worst episode of the show, then that's fine. But if it's not the worst of Series 15 to me, what is? If we're talking about episodes concerning their messages, one that really sticks out to me is James to the Rescue.
You are a steam tram. Steam trams can't be rescue engines.
That line from James right there implies that you're only useful if you're normal. Seriously, this episode sends out an ableist message, and speaking as someone who's on the autism spectrum, I find that incredibly insulting. Not just to myself, but possibly to young autistic fans of the show. This era has sent out discriminatory messages before, but James to the Rescue is easily the worst offender of the bunch. That episode just gets worse and worse with ableist attitudes rearing their ugly heads in recent times. Then there's Kevin to Steamy, or as it has come to be known, the episode that came before Wonky Whistle, and that's got far worse messages and implications. Basically, play around in a dangerous environment and you won't get in trouble for it. A storyboard suggested that Dukes or Handel and Peter Sam would appear, but unfortunately, or rather, fortunately, that didn't happen. The latter two would eventually return in CGI the following year, while Duke remains missing in action to this day. Then there's Fiery Flynn, or should I say, the anti-fireman Sam of Thomas episodes. This is an episode that portrays firefighters as incompetent idiots. Just what else needs to be said? Oh wait, I know.
His firebox was on fire.
Yeah, I'm sure that even back in 2011, you were all shocked by this line. You guys do know that a firebox is supposed to be on fire, right? Unless the firebox had collapsed, how is that even an emergency? A firebox has a fusible plug, a metal cylinder, which serves as a safety device against low water levels in a steam engine's boiler. Should it fail, it can result in boiler damage, possibly leading to an explosion if left untreated. Fiery Flynn is so infamously bad, in some cases possibly more so than Wonky Whistle, that it called for change to get Thomas back on track again. And it did, but not for another 2 years.
I guess. But I still say Wonky Whistle is way worse!
Shut up, you moron! Now, as mentioned, Flynn just came off as stupid in the season 15 finale. This is behavior you'd expect from a firefighter, ignoring warnings, racing off before an announcement is finished, letting insults get to them, spraying water where there isn't an emergency, and he would act just as stupid in Race to the Rescue next series, and that's the episode that comes immediately after Fiery Flynn. It says a lot that Flynn acted more like a hero in Day of the Diesels than series 15 and 16 did. Sure, he did get much better in the Brenna era, for the most part, but the damage had very much been done at this point. I doubt Flynn is ever gonna live that down. Belle, meanwhile, is what I consider a lost opportunity. I really like her bassist, the British Railway Standard Class 4 tank engine, and there's a lot that they could have done with her if she was given a proper chance. But the one time she got a starring role in Series 15, Big Belle just made her look overbearing and bullshit, although that episode was pretty forgettable in the long run. Since then, she's been a supporting character and barely had a chance to shine, or Mattel somehow forgot that she exists. Yeah, I know she was introduced in the worst era of the show, but come on, she's a female firefighter for God's sake. There's so much you could do with making her a role model for little girls who would want to be firefighters in the near future. Den and Dart, I didn't really care much for them until the Series 19 episode of the same name, but from what we had seen even then, Den is a slow thinker, while Dart quickly explains what he's trying to say. It's fine and all, but not really a whole lot to work with there. But the development Den received in Series 19 was really good, so I can't complain much there. Oh, and in case anyone is asking, I won't be giving my thoughts on Paxton, Sydney, and Norman here since they were merely props rather than characters back then. I'll come to them when I get to Series 17. Meanwhile, even though he had been introduced in Series 5 and had been a background character for the next decade or so, for the first time ever, Butch the Breakdown Vehicle finally got to speak in the episode Stuck on You. Why it took him so long to give him a speaking role, I don't know, but at least he got something. Stuck on You wasn't the greatest episode of that era, but it was one of the more average at best ones, even having 2 strikes instead of 3. For the first time since Series 4, or 6 if we consider the Pack 2-parter, we had a mini-saga going on with the logging locos to start of the series. It wasn't that great a saga, but it was at least nice for Sharon Miller to try something that worked in the classic era, even though since then, we've got a certain trilogy that's way better in terms of writing. Series 15 began production in November 2009. As explained, the first half of Series 15 was produced alongside the second half of Series 14, but before Day of the Diesels. This explains the abundance of the logging locos in both halves, appearing in 8 episodes total, and then 3 episodes afterward, and why we didn't see much of Flynn, Bell, Den, and Dart until the second half of Series 15. For every episode in this series, Thomas's name did not appear in any of the titles, and unless you actually read the descriptions, you'd never know he was the star in any of them. Series 15 was... No, it was trash when it came out, and it's trash upon rewatch, but at least we're almost at the end of the Nitrogen era, so surely things can get better from here, right? Three down, one more to go, then we're finally out of the Nitrogen era. I can't wait to get to the Burnett era just to wash the taste from my mouth. For a celebratory year, 2011 was rather underwhelming. As mentioned previously, Series 15 was terrible, and Day of the Diesels just came off as overhyped in retrospect. At first it was well received with the rhyming and alliteration cut down, making Diesel 10 a real menace once again after a pretty underwhelming portrayal in Calling All Engines, but now, most of the fandom despises it, with some people like myself ranking it as even worse than Missy Island Rescue. And as for the final book in the Railway series, Thomas and His Friends, it was pretty much recycled material. Thomas and the Swan was simply a retelling of an annual story from 1992, with an introduction featuring Pip and Emma becoming the new express engines to London that kind of went nowhere. We didn't get to see much of how Gordon reacted to this change. That could have been an interesting book in and of itself. Gordon did get a story to himself, however, with Gordon's Fire Service, probably the best of the book, and even mentioning the Peel-Goddard branch line for the first, and sadly only time. It may have been a rewrite to one of the stories in the Thomas Noisy book, but I could be wrong. Buffer Bashing, however, was simply the worst story, probably the entire Railway series, being the middle engine of Audrey's writing with no resolution. Centenary was just a rewrite of Golden Jubilee, and probably even more underwhelming. So all in all, Thomas and His Friends did not live up to its hype either, ending the Railway series on a very weak note. Now with Christopher in his early 80s and the fact that he has no plans to continue, we may never get the stories he wanted to tell but couldn't. Alas, poor Barry, we could have known him, Christopher. But was it all bad news for 2011? Not really. Greg Tiernan informed the Soder Island forums about some changes ahead, such as Sharon Miller stepping down from head writer and later being superseded by Andrew Brenner, who is then working on the CGI incarnation of Fireman Sam, beginning with Series 17 to air in 2013, which we'll cover next time. This promised a return to the quality storytelling and abandoning the Three Strikes formula altogether from Series 9 to 15. Brenner would also be joined by producer Ian McHugh, who had arrived during the production of Day of the Diesels, as well as Series 15 and 16, and he would keep that mantle all the way up to Series 24, being a creative executive producer for Series 21 and 22. In February 2012, shortly before Series 16 had begun airing, Apex partners with Zell Hit Entertainment to Mattel, and the rest is pretty much history. So, how does Series 16 stack up? Is it as awful as the 3 series prior, or was it a sign of better things to come? Well, there were signs of better things to come, but they were very few and far in between. One of them being that the rhyming element was removed altogether, but the constant alliteration and Three Strikes formula still plagued the writing. That and Winter Holiday, at least if you were from America. Not only that, after annoying the piss out of fans during Series 14 and 15, the Logging Locos and Misty Island were only prominently featured in just 2 episodes, while appearing in a brief scene in Welcome Stafford. Starting with Series 17, the Logging Locos and Misty Island were pretty much sent to the scrap heap, with Ferdinand briefly appearing in Signals Crossed if you look closely enough, and with Misty Island being made fun of in the way she does it.
Sitting in your shed? No. Working at the waste dump? Taking monkeys to the animal park? Ooh, I know. Going to Misty Island? No.
Not gonna comment.
Yeah, we get that Misty Island was a terrible invention, but it had been 4 years by the time it aired in 2016. How many viewers from the actual target audience would have gotten the joke? Still, all we can say to the Logging Locos' disappearance is good riddance.
You're no fun.
Oh, shut up, Mr. That's Right. Who does he think he is? Groot? Anyway, for all the badness that Series 16 endured, much like the 3 series prior, it did have some good episodes, one of them being Express Coming Through where, for once, it felt like Thomas and Gordon were in character. They even did a callback to Thomas's train. Flashbang Wallop even featured a picture of a Garrett locomotive, which had been Greg Tiernan's desire to include at some point, although one of them did eventually appear in full CGI in the form of Nia's friend Kwaku from Big World Big Adventures. Welcome Stafford wasn't too bad either, with the battery-powered electric engine having a wonderful voice provided by Keith Wickham, and with some dialogue that felt a bit more natural and, at times, funny. I feel like Stafford could have done more with the right idea for the character they've given him, but the most noteworthy episode of this series was Percy and the Calliope, in which the Free Strikes formula was implemented alongside the moral about not giving up, showing that it could work if handled properly. And of course, the ending.
But then, with a cough and a splutter, it began to play. Percy beamed from buffer to buffer.
I don't think I could really explain how happy I was when I first heard it. It really did feel like better things to come. At certain points. We did see the return of the Skarloey 5, but because Duncan's real-life relative Douglas, not Donald's brother Hamlet, thank you, Douglas was undergoing an overhaul at the time, Duncan was dropped from Series 16 in Blue Mountain Mystery, eventually returning in Series 18, and rather oddly proportioned. To properly render the engines, the team at Nitrogen Studios went to the Taliclin Railway for reference, which also finally fixed the issue with Peter Sam's funnels in Series 4. The episode in which they return in Don't Bother Victor was nothing short of underwhelming. It was basically the same plot as Sir Handel in Charge, which in turn was the same plot as The Green Controller. And I'll come back to the Christmas Tree Express soon enough. Blue Mountain Mystery for me is the true return to the Skarloey engines, as well as the introduction of Luke. He didn't appear in Series 16, nor did Owen and Merrick, so I won't discuss them here. I'll do so for Luke next time, but Owen and Merrick, don't care for either of them since they barely did much anyway. The same goes for Winston the Inspection Trolley. While he did have a few things to do in Series 17, half the time I almost forget that he exists. Chronologically, Series 16 comes after Blue Mountain Mystery, yet it aired before, with only Winston appearing in Happy Birthday Sir, but that hardly made much of a difference since none of the other newbies appeared as well. Production had started in April 2010, with Andrew Viner's website confirming that Thomas and the Rubbish Train had been commissioned around that time. It was the last series in which Sam Barlow was the story executive, and he even admitted in an interview with Soda Island Forums that the formula they went for with Series 13 to 16 was not a good one in hindsight.
Well, duh.
Rebecca Evans served as script editor for this series only, but only for the second half. 19 episodes aired in February and March, with the Christmas Tree Express being held back for Christmas 2012, and all I have to say is, what was the point? Series 14 and 15 had their Christmas-themed episodes to air alongside the rest when they premiered, and heck, Series 16 had Salty Surprise and Emily's Winter Party Special to air alongside the non-winter holiday episodes. So there was absolutely no excuse to hold the Christmas Tree Express back, especially of how awful it is. In fact, that episode is the coalition of everything wrong with the Nitrogen era jammed into 9 minutes.
Hey, can I point out that this season is the last?
Shut it, Matt! You can talk about Emily later. Now scram! As I was saying, everything that was wrong with the Nitrogen era was jammed into 9 minutes. The Free Strikes formula, absolutely annoying alliteration, Thomas being crane shunted where he doesn't belong, Toby being hopelessly out of character, the mere presence of the logging locos in Misty Island, the use of Winter Holiday for America, the lack of logic and continuity with Toby being afraid of going to Misty Island despite having been there in the past,
and Ben Small's vocal performance.
Wait, what?
He said Ben Small's vocal performances. You know, the guy who voiced Thomas. He also voiced a few others too, such as Toby, Rhedeus, Flynn, and a couple of other characters. Come to think of it, he did voice Stanley and Charlie for the US dub as well, but not for the UK dub? Huh, that's kind of strange.
He did sound a bit stilted in seasons 13 to 16, but I think he improved drastically in seasons 17 through 18, King of the Railway, Tale of the Brave, but yeah, Blue Mountain Mystery is hit or miss, I think.
Like I said previously, I'll admit some of his voices are pretty good, particularly his Rheneas voice, but even in season 17 and 18, his Thomas voice still sucks. I'm sure Ben is a nice guy, but when it comes to voicing the number 1, there are other people who have done a much better job voicing him. No, I do not count John Bellows, as he only voiced Thomas in bits of the Tatmar work print, not the final product.
That's enough, you guys! Can I please get back to finishing what I was about to say? I've already endured Matt interrupting me many times in previous episodes, and I don't want you guys doing the same thing.
Fine. I only came here because Mike, Matt, and Rachel are here.
Sorry, dude.
Then why are you okay with me interrupting in seasons 9 and 10?
Okay, you got me there, sis. We'll chat about this as a group discussion another time.
Okay, chat with you later, mate.
So, as I was saying, the Christmas Tree Express was shit, but that wasn't what I consider the worst episode of the Nitrogen era. Oh no, that dishonor goes to Sodor Surprise Day, an episode so horrendous that it should never have existed to begin with. I've always despised it even in my late teens, and that comes down to what happens at Brendan Docks. Thomas startles Cranky, causing him to drop a crate of fireworks in which they go rogue all over the place, and they could have potentially hurt someone or worse, killed them, not to mention property damage. If you thought Wonky Whistle's moment with Thomas running off and nearly endangering the workman while fixing his whistle was awful, then this is that moment times infinity. Thomas should have been punished for causing all this chaos, but instead, he sets everything right with no punishment. You know, when I was a kid, Thomas was my favorite character, but seeing his fall from grace culminating with Soda Surprise Day really hurt me inside, and it still does to this day. Thomas was meant to be a role model that kids could look up to, even back in his early days when he was a cheeky station pilot. But then he became an idiot during the hit model era. Then the Nitrogen era came on, turned him into Dark Era Patrick Star on rails. Just seeing Thomas fall like that just Sorry about that. I just don't know what else to say. Other than Series 16 sucks like the free series prior. Let's just finish this damn episode already. I did not enjoy revisiting the Nitrogen era in the slightest. Series 14 was the least bad season of the lot, but only by default. And while I do have Series 14 ranked as the worst of the entire show, it, along with 15 and 16, could be placed in any order because all three of them are the bottom of the barrel for Thomas and Friends. Sure, there are gems here and there, and I'll get to that in a bit, but are they worth the fiery flames and Sodor Surprise Days? No, absolutely not. I'd recommend skipping this era altogether. You're not missing a whole lot, believe me. If I never have to sit through almost 12 hours worth of garbage like that ever again, I can die happy. So what do I think are the least awful episodes of the Nitrogen era? Let's find out. Number 10, Victor Says Yes. Number 9, Welcome Stafford. Number 8, Flashbang Wallop. Number 7, Steamy Sodor. Number 6, Snow Tracks. Number 5, Being Percy. Number 4, Express Coming Through. Number 3, A Blooming Mess. Number 2, Percy and the Calliope. And number 1, Tickled Pink. But as for the worst, well, I could have made this a top 20, maybe top 25, but these 10 episodes are so bad that they deserve to be a list on their own. Number 10, Thomas and the Runaway Kite. Number 9, Up, Up, and Away. Number 8, Buzzy Bees. Number 7, Henry's Magic Box. Number 6, Thomas and the Snowman Party. Number 5, Ho Ho Snowman. Number 4, James the Rescue. Number 3, The Christmas Tree Express. Number 2, it's a two-way tie between Fiery Flynn and Race the Rescue. And number 1, You Know What. Ugh, thank God this is over. Now I can finally relieve myself from all this madness.
Zach? Where are you going?
Yes.
Boy, the Nitrogen era really did a number on you, didn't it? Well, I think I'll end this episode off for him, but before I do, allow me to say a few things. Walt Disney once said, "You're dead if you aim only for kids. Adults are only kids growing up anyway." I believe that's not only a very poignant quote, but an accurate metaphor for when it comes to the Nitrogen era of Thomas and Friends. Both the Railway series and the good seasons of Thomas the Tank Engine became successful because they not only thought about entertaining children, they thought about the adults too.
You've got to remember that you're not merely writing for children, you're writing for the mothers, fathers, aunts, uncles, grandfathers, grandmothers who've got to read the stories aloud, not just once, but over and over and over again.
The morals and the morals the morals of these stories were never jammed down the kid's throat. They weren't blatant. They weren't in capital letters. They were gently massaged into the framework of the show.
parent and child can read a Railway series book or watch an episode of the classic series of Thomas, and they both can enjoy it. That's not the case with the Nitrogen era of Thomas and Friends, which is only appealing to little kids to the point where only little kids can seem to enjoy it. But a parent is supposed to spend time with their children and nurture them. So, when parents are being forced to suffer through stuff like Wonky Whistle or Soda Surprise Day or any other episode from that era, they feel less encouraged to do their jobs. I speak not only for myself, but for the rest of us, that seeing how awful these episodes were made us more appreciative of what was to come. A writer who cared about what young children were watching, and episodes that a general audience could enjoy. Not only was this man involved with the Thomas series since its glory days, but he's someone who knew and cared about what the series stood for. And who is that man, you ask? Well, that's going to have to wait until next time. So, do you want me to close off this episode for you, Zach? Okay, he's Zach, you're watching SODORAMA, and he'll see you next time.
In every life you live,